I went camping about 3 weeks ago in the Huntsville National Forest in Texas. Me and 3 friends that came home for the weekend, they're all in college, and usually we all get together at least once a year. Old friends from high school. For the camping trip, we plan to go backpacking deep in the forest, live off the fish that we catch and animals that we trap. We've been doing this for a while in Texas and in numerous places, Arizona, Colorado, if anyone's familiar with the Spanish peaks there. New Mexico. Well, so, we're pretty much used to anything that you'd encounter out there. It was my turn to pick where we went camping, so I chose Huntsville. More accurately, it's Huntsville, New Waverly. So, we drive up there, park our cars in the camping park, and start walking off into the forest. We've had some laughs along the way, and everyone's catching up with each other's lives, and we walk until it starts to get dark and set up camp where we stopped. Everyone gathered wood to make a fire, and we set up our tents, and we do what we always do, try to scare each other with weird stories. But around this time, we started to smell something very faint. It was noticeable, but not overbearing. We couldn't put our fingers on what it was, so we just carried on. Mike had to go piss, and he walked off to the forest. A second later, he comes running back, piss all down his jeans like he missed really bad. And immediately, we all crack up and throw some jokes at him. But then we noticed that he was white as snow, trying to catch his breath. He starts screaming for us to follow him and runs off. We all get serious and go follow him, not knowing what the problem was. We start to hear a faint scream and crying in the distance, and in the direction that we're running, it was pitch black away from the camp, and Mike had the only flashlight. We left ours at the camp. He had his from his trip taking a piss, so at this stage, we didn't have much choice but to follow the light, which was frantically pointing here and there in front of him. Well, the scream gets louder, and Mike starts to slow down. We then notice a ratty old cabin that looked like it was abandoned, except for a faint light that we could see from one of the old, mildew-covered windows. The crying was intense. Whoever it was couldn't breathe enough to let out a full yell. We all followed Mike up to the front door. We could all hear the crying from inside. As soon as he knocked on the door, it stopped. We all waited and heard really heavy footsteps walking fast to the door. There was a giant slam against the door and the sound of a bolt locking. And then nothing. We waited for a bit, knocked a few more times. Still nothing. We walked around the house. There was no fucking way that we were leaving each other's side. We noticed a window, which was a good ways up. Alex took a deep breath and asked us to give him a boost so that he could see inside. Me and Mike lifted him up to the window. We watched him brush away dirt and webs from the window and place his face close to it to try and see something. It was a quick beat. Then suddenly he breathed in fast and let out a loud scream. Then he fell back from the window, screaming bloody murder the whole way. We all tried to calm him down, but he was hysterical. We went to him, but he started to shake, punch, kick, curse, you name it, and then took off towards the camp. None of us wanted to be separated, so we all ran close behind him. We caught up to him and grabbed him and set him down. The fire was dying, so I grabbed some nearby wood that we had collected and added it to the fire. My hands were shaking, and I had to do something. I went back to Alex. We all tried to calm him down. He wouldn't. He just kept screaming and breathing so hard that he eventually fainted. All of us are terrified now, and we all kept the fire high until sunrise. Periodically, Alex kept waking up, screaming just like before. By sunrise, he was up and looked catatonic, just mumbling to himself and whimpering. Me and Mike decided to go look at the cabin now that it was daylight, and we searched where we thought that it was, except there was nothing there, like nothing at all. The distinct smell from last night had now grown to a very strong smell of something dead, something stale. We headed back to the campsite. When we got there, we found Alex had chewed into the side of his face and swallowed so much blood that he was throwing up. John was at his back. He looked like he was about to die from exhaustion. I guess we all looked that way. I just didn't notice it until I saw his face. Alex said, quietly, that we need to leave. Now. We all started to pack up the tent. It started to rain really heavily. It was about noon, and the sky started to grow really dark. Alex started to go into a panic. He went and grabbed a large stick and yelled at us to leave. Leave it all, and leave now. Or he'd knock us out and drag us out of there himself. And Mike started to yell at him, and they started to fight. We broke it up and finished packing, and started to make our way back. After a little while, we arrived at a creek that we had crossed the previous day. Only it was flooded over. The water was moving too fast for us to cross. Alex started to scream again, yelling at Mike for taking his time packing up the tent when we could have just gotten out of here. This went on for a while until we finally convinced Alex to calm down and tell us what happened. He said as soon as he put his face to the glass, a face on the other side did the same thing and started to smile. Really big. It had dark eyes and a dark mouth, which was much bigger than Alex's, and the smile got as large as it could. A giant shadow behind it swung something down and sliced its face off. And the face was stuck to the window. And he said that it started to laugh quietly as it slid down. Mike, still pissed off, and though he wouldn't admit it, began to get really freaked out, started to argue with him again, and we eventually started to follow the creek for a way, trying to find a way to cross. We then started to see toys floating in the creek. Really old toys. Old Barbie dolls and baby dolls. This wasn't like any old trash floating in the creek, though. This was a lot of Barbies. A lot of baby dolls. One washed toward the side and Mike picked it up. It had some kind of voice chip that was dying and started to say some gurgled words that we couldn't understand, followed by its sad excuse for laughter. It sounded like it was whispering. We thought the batteries must be dying. He threw it down. We kept going, and the sun was starting to set. Alex was freaking out more now and was whimpering and breathing heavily. We all started to see shadows move behind trees, something that we all called BS on until we were all seeing it. It was barely light out, and we stop as we see the cabin right in front of us. None of us knows what to think. Mike says, "This is bullshit. I'm going in there." And Alex tries to stop him. We all do. All of us just want to go home. Mike says to all of us to fuck off and do our own thing. He doesn't care anymore. This is all bull. We start to hear hundreds of the same sort of baby dolls before, laughing, whimpering, trying to sing. We start to move forward past the cabin. All of us just kept pushing forward. We smell something dead in the air, something stale. The same something as before. We started to hear something crying, something screaming. We kept on going. We eventually crossed the creek and left the woods. We get back to our vehicle, we get in. It's pitch black and we drive. We're about to get on the 45 to Houston, but the road is under construction and can't be accessed. It points to a detour, and as we head towards the detour, it seems to be small. A small, bumpy dirt road going into the woods. We see this little girl come up to us. She looks like she was in trouble, young, very pretty. She approaches the passenger side window. She looks like she's really drugged up or beaten, and Alex doesn't roll down the window, nor does he open the door. She reaches for the handle and he immediately locks it. She puts her face on the window and starts to smile. Really big. We floor it. Alex starts to cry and scream, and we all breathing so heavy. We finally cut onto the street, and it takes us to the 45. We take it the whole way. We get back to my apartment. Everyone doesn't know what to say. We all break apart, and we go our separate ways. Mike messages me later, and he says that he's going back. I try to convince him not to, and all he does is say that it was all in our minds. It was all just screwing with us. I think he just wants to prove to himself that he wasn't scared. I can smell that stench everywhere now. I don't go out anymore. I just stay in and I don't answer the door. Last week, everyone I met was acting really strange. People that I knew for a long time, and total strangers. My own dad. When I went to his place to eat supper with him, he just watched me strangely. When I was sitting down, he didn't say a word the whole time. I kept asking him what's wrong. He just slowly shook his head. When I was leaving to go home, I turned to wave. He had black eyes and an open mouth like he was in pain. And when I started to walk back, he shut the door and bolted it. I stayed there knocking and knocking. Nothing. I called him. His phone was disconnected. I even called the police. And halfway through the questions they were asking me, the connection started to fade into static. I could hear a faint mumbling, singing, laughing. Mike has completely vanished. There's not even a record of him still being alive. When I called Alex's house, they talk to me like I'm some kind of salesman. They say that they don't know any Alex, and please stop calling. And the person who tells me this is Alex's mother. I can't get a hold of John. Someone knocked on my door, and when I looked, I saw a face completely covered by the peephole. And a giant smile started to form. I called the cops again, and instead of it turning into static, they just got really strange. Sir, are you affected by any drugs at the moment? No. Are you coming home anytime soon? Excuse me? Come home. And the phone call ended. My mail slot swings every now and then. Someone is sliding pieces of baby dolls through it. I try to call people now, and all I can hear is static and bad baby doll noises. It's crying and screaming, and my TV is busted, but when I go piss, I can hear it on. I might be going insane. Whoever lives above me has started to scream in pain and crying deeply recently, and I hear giant footsteps from their apartment, and I hear banging and sometimes falling to the ground, and from the neighbors to the right of my apartment, I hear what sounds like a baby that never gets tended to, and then it sounds like the baby doll, whose batteries are dying. My phone has been ringing now. It's Alex. He's telling me things in a language I've never heard before, nor could I ever manage to repeat. I keep getting emails of pictures of black and small colorations. Now I can't even access my email. Someone knocks on the door, then they slam against it, and I hear the bolts unlocking one by one. I run and I make sure that they're all locked. Then I sit down, and I begin to cry.